In the vast Andarion Empire, beauty was considered a symbol of divine favor. For centuries, the royal bloodline of Andarion had been known across the galaxy not only for power, but for elegance. The rulers of the empire possessed flawless silver skin, glowing violet eyes, and an almost otherworldly grace that made them appear more like living stars than mortal beings. But one royal heir broke that perfect image. Her name was Princess Heir, and she carried scars. The story behind those scars was whispered quietly in palace halls, but rarely spoken aloud in public. Many years ago, when Heir was only a child, an enemy fleet had attacked the royal capital. One of the explosions had ripped through the palace gardens where the young princess had been playing. The flames had nearly killed her. Doctors saved her life, but the fire left permanent marks across the left side of her face and neck. To most civilizations, scars were simply signs of survival. But in Andarion society, where perfection defined royalty, the marks became something far more cruel. They became a reason for rejection. Chapter 2. The Forgotten Heir. Heir grew up inside the golden halls of the royal palace, surrounded by luxury but isolated by silence. Servants bowed politely when she walked past. Nobles avoided looking at her directly. Even visiting diplomats often struggled to hide their discomfort. The princess learned quickly that people preferred to admire beauty, not bravery. Her younger sister, Princess Selene, was everything the empire adored. Selene was radiant, charming, and flawless. Crowds cheered when she appeared in public. Meanwhile, Heir rarely left the palace. Over time, rumors spread across the empire. Some claimed the scarred princess had become bitter. Others believed she hid away because she was ashamed. Neither rumor was entirely true. The truth was simpler. Heir had simply stopped expecting anyone to see her. Chapter 3. A Political Problem. Years later, when the emperor passed away, the responsibility of ruling the empire fell upon the royal council. According to tradition, one of the emperor's daughters would eventually become Empress. But there was a problem. Selene was beloved by the people but lacked the patience and strategic mind needed to rule a galactic empire. Heir, on the other hand, was brilliant. She studied diplomacy, economics, and military strategy with unmatched dedication. Even the most experienced advisors admitted privately that she possessed the mind of a great leader. But many nobles refused to support her, not because of her intelligence, because of her scars. They feared that an empress who did not embody physical perfection would weaken the empire's image among other civilizations. The council eventually proposed a solution: a royal marriage. If Princess Heir married a powerful noble or allied ruler, it would strengthen her legitimacy. The idea seemed reasonable, until the proposals began. Chapter 4. Rejection. The royal palace sent invitations to noble families and allied planets across the empire. Eligible suitors were invited to meet Princess Heir and potentially form a political union. The first suitor arrived from a wealthy star system known for its powerful fleets. He spoke politely with the princess for exactly 9 minutes. Then he requested a private meeting with the council. Hours later, he departed the planet. His message was simple: he would not marry her. The second suitor refused to even meet the princess in person after seeing her from across the room. The third politely claimed his duties required him to return home immediately. And so it continued, week after week, month after month. Every suitor declined. Some were polite, some were cruel, but the message was always the same. No one wanted the scarred princess. Chapter 5. A Visitor from Earth. While the empire struggled with its political dilemma, a diplomatic exchange program quietly brought representatives from various civilizations to the Andarion capital. One of them was a human. His name was Daniel Reyes. Unlike most diplomats, Daniel wasn't from a powerful noble family. He was a historian and cultural specialist from Earth's interstellar coalition. His assignment was simple: study Andarion history and strengthen peaceful relations between the two civilizations. Daniel had spent most of his life fascinated by alien cultures. The Andarion Empire was one of the most ancient and influential civilizations in the galaxy. Its architecture, traditions, and political systems were legendary. He arrived at the royal capital expecting to study history. He didn't expect to meet a princess who had been rejected by the entire galaxy. Chapter 6: An Unusual Encounter. The first time Daniel saw Princess Heir was purely accidental. He had been exploring the palace library, a massive chamber filled with glowing archives containing thousands of years of imperial knowledge. While examining a historical projection, he noticed someone sitting quietly near the far window. The woman wore simple royal attire and was reading from a holographic document. When she turned slightly, Daniel noticed the scars across the left side of her face. He recognized her immediately: the scarred princess. For a moment, Daniel hesitated. He had heard the rumors, but something about the way she sat there, focused and calm, made those rumors seem incredibly shallow. He approached slowly. "Excuse me," he said politely. "I hope I'm not interrupting." Heir looked up, clearly surprised. Most visitors avoided approaching her. "You're the human scholar," she said. Daniel nodded. "And you're the princess who reads ancient battle strategies for fun." For the first time in a long while, Heir smiled. Chapter 7: Conversations. Over the following weeks, Daniel and Heir met frequently in the palace library. At first, their conversations focused on history. Daniel asked endless questions about Andarion civilization. Heir shared insights about ancient wars, diplomatic alliances, and the Empire's expansion through the stars. But gradually, their discussions became more personal. Daniel never avoided looking at her scars. He never treated her differently. One evening, as they walked through the palace gardens, Heir finally asked the question that had been quietly bothering her. "Why don't they bother you?" Daniel looked confused. "My scars," she clarified. He shrugged slightly. "They tell a story." "A story? You survived something that could have killed you. That doesn't make me beautiful in Andarion culture." Daniel smiled. "Well, maybe your culture needs better standards." Chapter 8: The Council's Last Attempt. Meanwhile, the Royal Council was growing desperate. The Empire needed stability, and stability required a clear heir. After countless failed proposals, the Council decided on one final solution: a public royal gathering. Nobles, diplomats, and military leaders from across the Empire would attend. Any noble brave enough to step forward and request Princess Heir's hand in marriage would gain enormous influence within the Empire. The event was announced across hundreds of star systems. The palace prepared for one of the largest gatherings in its history. Privately, many council members hoped anyone, would step forward. Because if no one did, the rejection would become a humiliation for the royal family. Chapter 9: The Gathering. The royal hall glittered with thousands of lights as guests arrived from across the galaxy. Powerful admirals, wealthy nobles, foreign ambassadors. Princess Heir stood beside the royal throne wearing formal attire. Her posture was calm, but inside, she already knew what would happen. No one would choose her. Across the hall, Daniel stood among the diplomatic observers. He had only learned about the marriage proposal ceremony that morning, and the more he listened to the whispers around him, the more uncomfortable he became. The event felt less like a celebration, and more like a public test, one designed for her to fail. Chapter 10: Silence. When the ceremony began, the council leaders stepped forward. Any noble who wishes to form a royal union with Princess Aelira may now present their request. The hall became silent. Hundreds of people stood watching. Minutes passed. No one moved. Aelira remained perfectly still. She had expected this, but that didn't make it hurt any less. Then something unexpected happened. Someone stepped forward. But it wasn't a noble. It wasn't a prince. It wasn't even an Andarion. It was the human diplomat, Daniel Reyes. Chapter 11. The Decision. The entire hall turned toward him in shock. Daniel walked calmly to the center of the chamber. The council members exchanged confused glances. "You are not a noble," one of them said. Daniel nodded. "That's correct. You are not even a citizen of this empire." "Also correct." The council leader frowned. "Then why are you stepping forward?" Daniel looked toward Princess Aelira.
His voice was steady.
"Because I would like to ask for her hand." Gasps spread across the hall. The council members whispered urgently among themselves. Finally, the leader asked the obvious question. "Why?" Daniel smiled slightly. "Because she's the most intelligent, brave, and fascinating person in this entire palace."
He paused.
"And apparently I'm the only one here smart enough to notice." Chapter 12. A Choice. The council hesitated. This situation had never happened before. A foreign diplomat requesting a royal marriage. All eyes turned toward Princess Aelira. According to tradition, the final decision was hers. For a moment, she simply stared at Daniel, not with disbelief, but with something much deeper.
Hope.
"You understand what this means?" she asked him quietly. Daniel nodded. "It means standing beside you. And facing the judgment of an entire empire? I've faced worse." She raised an eyebrow. "Such as?" "Earth's internet." For the second time that day, Aelira laughed. Then she turned toward the council. "I accept." Chapter 13. Shock across the empire. News of the royal engagement spread across the galaxy within hours. Reactions were mixed. Some nobles were furious that an outsider had become part of the royal family. Others admired Daniel's courage. But the citizens of the empire saw something different. For the first time in years, Princess Aelira appeared in public beside someone who looked at her not with pity or discomfort, but with genuine admiration. Gradually, opinions began to change. People started to see the princess differently. Not as the scarred royal who had been rejected, but as a future empress who had finally found someone who valued her for who she truly was. Chapter 14. The Coronation. 2 years later, Princess Aelira was crowned Empress of the Andarion Empire. Daniel stood beside her as her royal partner. When the ceremony ended, the massive crowd outside the palace erupted into cheers. Aelira looked out across the city and then turned to Daniel. "Do you regret it?" she asked softly. "Marrying the scarred princess?" Daniel smiled. "You're not the scarred princess anymore." "What am I?" "The empress who changed an entire empire's definition of beauty." Aelira looked thoughtful. Then she squeezed his hand gently. "Funny," she said. "What?" "For so many years, no one wanted me." Daniel looked out at the cheering crowds. "Well," he said, "turns out they were all wrong." Chapter 15. Beyond the Scars. Years later, historians would write about the reign of Empress Aelira as one of the most prosperous eras in Andarion history. Trade expanded, alliances strengthened, and the empire slowly abandoned its obsession with physical perfection. Because the scarred princess had proven something important.
Strength.
Wisdom.
Compassion.
Those were the qualities that truly defined a ruler. And sometimes, all it took to reveal that truth was one person willing to step forward when no one else would. One person who looked beyond the scars. And chose her anyway.